I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us this morning as we look to discuss and then do a quick demo of Microsoft Teams. Before we jump into that, I do have just a few quick housekeeping notes. So the first is we'd love to hear your feedback and get your questions. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. And I would actually ask if you do that, please direct those specifically to Jacob Tarowski. I'm going to talk about him a little bit more here in a moment, but he's going to be able to answer any of those questions you might have while we're going throughout the presentation and demo, or he might actually save those for the end as well for a quick Q&A. The other thing I want to say about the chat is we have had over 250 people register for this training, so we know there's a lot of interest around Microsoft Teams. And what I would ask is this is going to be a really high-level overview of Teams. If there's something I don't cover or something you want to hear more about, put that in the chat because that's going to give us some great feedback about what you want to learn more on so that as we continue to push these out, we can really gear it towards what's going to be relevant for you. Okay, now with that, doing a quick round of introductions for myself and for Jacob, who I mentioned just a moment ago. So my name's Logan McCoy. I'm the VP of Services here at CCB Technology. So essentially, I oversee our entire professional services team and our entire managed services team. For this webinar, my role essentially is I am going to be the presenter. I'm going to be talking to you about Microsoft Teams and then also giving you a quick demo on that. And as I mentioned about Jacob, he is our Director of Enterprise Architecture, and he's the genius behind it all. So he's the guy who really has tested out and vetted Teams, and he does that with all of the solutions that we deploy and utilize for our clients to make sure it's a sound solution, it fits within the marketplace that we're going for, that it fits for our clients, and that it's delivered in an excellent fashion. So he is also on here. That's primarily going to be helping me answer any of those questions that come through, especially if they're extremely technical. Now, before I get into Teams, just a quick backdrop on CCB, because looking at the attendee list, I see a lot of familiar names, but I also see a number of you that I don't know, and so I don't want to assume that you know who we are. So we were started back in 1991, and that mission that's printed right across the screen there is true, and it's been true since day one. It is to help our clients achieve their goals and dreams through technology. And we've been able to help over 45,000 different organizations across the nation by helping them either procure technology at an affordable rate or actually also helping them implement that technology. We started just as a traditional VAR, if you know that phrase, a value-added reseller, but about 10 years ago, we made that shift to being a full-blown service provider, MSP, or managed service provider. And as you can see down there, we've won a number of awards. We've consistently been in the top 150 when it comes to an MSP, which I'm really excited about because we've only been doing that, even though we've been in business for almost 30 years, we've only been doing the MSP for 10. And so the fact that we're already in the top 150, I think speaks volumes to the fact of hopefully we're doing something right within all of that. So it's a little bit of backdrop about CCB, who we are and what we do. Now, about Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams has actually been around since 2017. It was announced in 2016, and then Microsoft actually did a GA, general launch or general announcement and release in 2017. And Microsoft Teams really looks to combine two previous applications that many of you are probably going to be familiar of, right? One of those being Skype, and the other one of those being SharePoint. Now, for Skype, if you've never used it, it's essentially a communication platform, right? And so you've got your chat and your video conferencing, your web conferencing, your ability to see presence, right? All of those components of that type of communication within Skype has been rolled to within Teams. Now, on the converse side of that, you've got SharePoint, right? Which at its base level is a document repository giving you some additional ability to collaborate real-time in documents, whereas in the past, you'd have to go into a document, save it, let the other person go into it, they make their edits and save it, right? SharePoint really tried to help mitigate that problem that a lot of users were having, especially when they were working remote on the same document. And so what Microsoft has done is they've tried to redefine how we work, how we communicate, and how we collaborate by combining Skype and SharePoint together into what we have now, which is Teams. Now, the really great thing about Teams is that whether you're utilizing it just for chat, you're utilizing it maybe just for Teams, you're doing everything, including the ability to have it as your full phone solution, or you're just doing one small component. While Microsoft is trying to utilize this tool to help redefine how we work, the beauty is you get to choose what you actually want to use. So I will say you'll get to see more of the power behind the integration and what you're able to do with it the more you use it. But for many, you might only be utilizing it for chat, like I mentioned a moment ago. And that's great because it's a phenomenal chat tool that I'll show you kind of how it works, what it looks like, and all that kind of stuff, right? So at its base level, that's what Microsoft Teams is. It's a communication and collaboration tool. Now, as a quick, I'd say just note about why did we move? Why did CCB make the move? And there's a number of reasons. I'm just going to list 5 really quickly. The first was we already had 365. We're a massive Microsoft partner. We've moved over 300 organizations, thousands and thousands of seats to Office 365. And we've helped even more than that transact or just actually procure Office 365. But we consume it ourselves. We're an Office 365 client. And so for us, it just made sense, right? It's in the Microsoft stack. It's free. I don't have to pay anything additional, especially if I'm not doing the phone aspect of it. It's a solution that does more than Skype and SharePoint. It's very user-friendly, so why wouldn't we use it, right? So for us, it was a no-brainer in the sense of we already have it. We're already technically paying for it. We might as well use it. The second, which I alluded to in the first point there, was it provided a seamless and unified experience. The fact that it's in the Microsoft stack is a difference maker, because while if you were on the Ring Central demo that I did on Tuesday, there's Slack, there's other types of applications out there that do integrate really well, you really do get a seamless and unified experience across the Microsoft platform. And you see that with the integrations they're building within Outlook or within OneNote or within Word, all of these different applications that many of us have used for years. It really kind of shines when you bring Teams into that component as well. I've said this for every Office 365 demo that I've ever done. I think Microsoft in many ways leads the way from a security and reliability standpoint. I won't go into all the details of what that means, but if you want to go do your own research, the best thing I would say, go out to the Microsoft Trust Center and just look at all the different compliances that they meet, the BAAs that they sign if you're healthcare related right off the bat, all of that stuff that they really do that I think doesn't necessarily go above and beyond, but it's definitely at the higher end of when you look at all those public cloud offerings and services, they're doing their due diligence, right? And so while it's no different now that you're including Teams, it's still a big factor for us of this is a platform we're using and we support our clients. So we need to make sure that not only are we secure and reliable for ourselves, but also that we're doing that on the benefit of our clients. It really streamlined communication. So I would say a big component that we've seen is being able to internalize those communications even more and to put them within a targeted or strategic focus. And I'll show you what that means specifically when I'm demoing Teams. But for us, I've seen a massive benefit in really streamlining how we communicate and how we collaborate, especially on the project side, which we do a lot of for our clients. And then last but not least, the mobility and integrations that we had. So a phenomenal thing is if you've used Teams at all, or if you've tried the Teams app on your mobile phone or on an iPad, that experience is going to be very similar to even if you're using the desktop app. Now, obviously, it's different size screens and there are changes, but the ability to do what you need to within Teams is very, very similar to what you can do on your laptop or desktop. And so the ability to be mobile, especially for all of us right now, because I'm assuming 95% of us are working remote. I'm doing this webinar from my son's bedroom, aka now my new office, right? And so the ability to be mobile and work just like you're in the office has been huge. And Microsoft has done a great job of integrating. I'm going to show you in the demo how we've integrated SurveyMonkey because we utilize that in some components. We utilize Ring Central as our phone system and how that's been integrated to a point. And we're not even doing all that you can with that integration right now. So a lot of those were major reasons why we decided making the move to Microsoft Teams was a good one. Now I'm going to jump out of the presentation here. So let me close this out. And I am going to actually jump into Microsoft Teams itself. So I'm going to show you both the desktop application version as well as the browser version. And the biggest reason why I want to show you that is just very simply to show you how similar they are. Because depending on what version of Office 365 you have or are going to, you might not have the full version. And for many of you, that might not matter because when I show you what it looks like in the browser version, you might say, sold, don't need it, right? I don't need to move to E3 or Business Premium for Office 365. And I want to say as well as I start to demo all of this, this is actually our live tenant. So I've often in the past done 365 demos in demo tenants. I really want to show you what we're doing with it. Let's peel back the curtains and show you how we're using it, how we're not, all that kind of good stuff, right? So you might see varying conversations in here. I've tried to make sure almost all of them are appropriate and all of that and good to see. But if you see something, apologies ahead of time and for that. So diving into it overall with what Teams is, right? So you've got your main navigation page right here. And this is really where you're going to jump between the main functions that's included within Microsoft Teams. So if we start going through those and what those are, the first one is activity. And basically this just shows all the activity that's going on that is related to me, right? Whether it's someone specifically reaching out to me in a chat or it's a part of a specific team. So if I need to kind of see what's been going on for the day, I can get a quick debrief on what that looks like. Now, in the same vein, this can get really overwhelming. And that's the thing, is oftentimes when you have the ability where communication starts to flow, that's an awesome thing, right? But it can also then, if you're like me, start to feel really overwhelming. And I'm very task oriented in a lot of ways. And so for me, I might just want to see in this activity feed really quickly, what is specifically related to me that I need to respond to. And so right up here on the filter, I can dive right into this and I can go to mentions. And this is going to then very quickly show all of the specific mentions that were directed at me. So this one, for example, as a quick joke, now that we're remote, I do a team morning in the morning and in the afternoon, actually. And I start with a horrible dad joke. I have 4 young kids, so I get the right to do it. And I told a horrible joke this morning, and Kirk wanted to kind of add to that. And so he mentioned me specifically, right? So in that, the reason why I'm showing or saying all of that is to say these are the specific ones that pertain to me. So when you do the @ symbol and you mention somebody, then if I were to mention Jacob or Kirk or whoever it might be, that's going to specifically show up for them. And so if I want to come back up to activity and again filter on that, I can very easily do that, right? Now, the next one here is chat. And chat is, as I mentioned before, if you've used Skype, it's going to be very similar to that feature and functionality. So you're going to see very quickly here, it's got a very similar type of feel. I have all of my, I'd say, constant conversations that I'm using right here. I've got, I would say, recent conversations that I have that I'm not necessarily saving. And then if I want to see all my contacts, I can also very quickly do that. And something I'll point out before I jump into the conversation component as well is if I want to be able to see when somebody becomes available, right? Because you've got the presence here that shows me who's available. Like, for example, this little arrow is telling me that Haley's out of the office, right? But if I want to see when Deneen comes back online, I can click on the ellipses here and I can actually say notify me when available. And so I've already done that, for example, with someone like Patrick, our CEO. And so I would actually be turning it off here. But every time Patrick jumps on Teams, then it's going to pop up a little dialog box for me down here on my other monitor, because that's my main screen, saying, hey, Patrick's available if you want to chat with him, right? Which is great. Now, within the chat, like I mentioned already, it's going to have that similar feel to Skype, right? So your ability to attach a file, to do an emoji, all of those kinds of things, to do a video call if I want to do a audio call if I want to. And I'll say you can do an audio call with all of your internal employees now because it's going over the internet. In order to be able to do an external call with, let's say a client or something, you would need to have the full functionality of the phone system or aspect of Teams set up. We're not utilizing that. We're doing Ring Central for our full phone system. But if you do that, then that really does give you the full capability to call somebody, whether they're an internal employee or they're an external employee or a client, not external employee, but client. And then I also have the ability to share my screen, right? So if I want to be able to share my screen, show what's going on within any of those, just like you could within Skype. Something that I often joke about for the reason why we moved to Microsoft Teams is because now right within Teams, you can do any of the GIFs that you want. So you can see that Jacob and I primarily communicate through GIFs. We don't actually talk anymore in normal text. So Jacob thought I was online. I said I promised I wasn't. He's telling me that he doesn't believe me. I'm telling him that I give you my word, right? So it's really enriched our conversations. We've connected on a deeper level, and it's been really helpful. All joking aside, it is just a nice, fun little component that I'm sure, as all of you know, it's a stressful time right now, and to be able to laugh is such a gift in so many ways, right? So within this as well, for the ability to chat, if I want to be able to filter, so I want to find a specific conversation that I was having with, let's say, Jacob, Tim, and Steve, then I can quickly dive into that, and that's going to show me, perfect, here's the conversation that was with Jacob, Tim, and Steve that I can dive into and very, very quickly see. Just another cool little thing that I really like about Microsoft Teams is, like within Outlook, you can, if you click on an email but you want to list it as unread, or you flag it to go back to later, oftentimes what's happened to me is I might click on a conversation and it shows that I've read it, and I'm like, oh no, I actually don't have time to respond to that right now. What do I do? Well, I can actually jump right into this, and I can actually mark this as unread. And what's great then is that it then pops up here. You can see it's bolded, which shows that I have something that I haven't read. And so I would need to come back in here, read that, and so for it to actually then go away, which is great. Another quick little thing as well, and I'll do it right here, is that if I send a message to Jacob, this little check mark here shows that that message has been delivered. And what you can see up here where it's got basically like a little eyeball, that shows that that message was actually read. And so it's a nice little difference to show you if they've even seen your message yet or not. The last thing that I'll kind of point out and mention, and I'll use this one as an example, and this is available across the entire Microsoft stack. So if you're in education and you've got students who are learning how to read, this isn't necessarily just a Teams thing. This is in Word and OneNote, but it's called the Immersive Reader. And basically what this does is this helps people who might have a learning disability or younger children who are learning how to read, right? And so if I want to be able to increase the text size, if I want to be able to slow down or speed up the volume, if I want it to be a male or female voice, if I want to highlight certain nouns or adverbs so that as they're reading this, they can kind of then see, okay, this is a noun, this is an adverb, this is a verb, right? It's a great functionality built right within there. And if I know that a number of schools are switching from Zoom to Teams, and if you're one of those, this is a great functionality built right within there that when I go then to play this message, it would read in my headphones here. You wouldn't hear it over this webinar. It's going to read that out so that I can follow along, which is just another great feature and functionality. The last little component I'll mention is my ability to share to Outlook. So the last major iteration of Teams, they did a lot to really try and integrate Outlook more to Teams. And so from this side, for example, if I want to take this message and send it to somebody in an email really quickly, then I can do that right from here if I so choose to do that. So that's a quick overview of the chat component. I want to dive into a little bit more the Teams aspect now, just kind of keeping an eye on the clock as well, because I know we're flying. So these are all of the teams that we currently have right now that are set up, right? And I'll click on this one really quickly. These are the ones that my team specifically are utilizing, right? And you can see down here, if I have the ability as an administrator, you can restrict this, but I have the ability to go ahead and create a team if I want to, right? And teams are basically ways to centralize work. And for us, for example, the best and clearest way I can give to you is we work on a number of projects for our clients. So what we've done is we've created a team that's called Services Projects. And within that team, we have a number of channels. So you can see here, all of these channels represent different clients and their specific projects, right? Now within here, what's really great, if I go to actually like manage this specific channel, I can do that. And I can look to see who the members are, what access they have, and all of that. If I want to go to the overall team and manage the team, I can also do that. So if I want to see if there are any pending requests, because this is a private team, they have to more or less be admitted to it, then I would say, okay, if there was one here, it would show me. I don't have any, which is telling me that I don't, right? If I want to be able to see all the channels within that, right, I can very quickly see what channels have all basically existed within this team. And if you see some of these that aren't checked, it's the same thing down here that says there's 3 hidden channels. And basically what that means is, you know, over time, we would have a massive sprawl of channels here, right? Because I think we average over 250 to 300 projects a year. So if we put all of those in here over the course of a year, this is going to become extremely cumbersome, right? So once a project finishes for us, we actually go in and we hide that channel. And so you'll see here, legal services, because it's right on the other screen here, is actually hidden. And you can see right here that it's also not checked. So if I were to go and check this, it would actually pop back up then in my main window right there, which is a really nice feature and functionality. So like I mentioned, each of these channels I can create and set them as private, meaning that I only have to actually provide access to specific users. So in this case, the people that have access would be Kirk, Lewis, Deneen, and myself. Those are all of the engineers, project managers, and then myself that are assigned to this, right? And we did a fair amount of work on this project within the last week and a half. We actually cut them over to a whole new infrastructure, right? And the thing that I have loved about this, I can't emphasize this enough, is when you're in the office, the ability to have those organic conversations of what goes on just happens, right? It's just Lewis getting up and going and talking to Deneen about, hey, this is where I'm at and this is what's going on. When we went remote, my biggest concern is that we were going to lose this. And what Teams has enabled us to do, I think, is to retain, in many ways, the ability for us to actually communicate in the way like as if we were in the office. And that's powerful. To be able to say genuinely, this isn't me selling you on it because I've used it myself and I tell you if it works or doesn't work. But to communicate like we were if we were in the office has been a huge benefit for us in that regard, right? Now, just like I can filter in chat and activity, I can do the same thing here. So if I need needs to filter by a specific project, Lake Automotive in this sense, I can very quickly do that and drill down into what's going on with that specific channel that we're working through and talking about, right? Now, in moving beyond Teams here, right, just with these other key components. So you have the calendar, which syncs very, very well. I don't want to say perfectly, but I will say I've never had an issue with Teams syncing with my Outlook calendar. And so I can very much so treat this just like I would my Outlook calendar. If I need to jump into a RingCentral meeting, which we actually have with Darnell, one of our clients at 1 o'clock today, I can see who's attended, I can see who they accepted, and I can drill down right in here, click on the hyperlink, go ahead and actually jump right into that meeting. Now, calls, like I mentioned earlier, calls are great because if I need to go and call any internal employee, because again, we're not using this for our full phone system, so it's really only internal calls, I can make a quick call to Jacob if I want. I can also do a quick video call. And I would tell you, 9 out of my 10 communications that are happening even on the fly, they're video calls. I much prefer to see someone's face. I want to see their nonverbal cues. So being able to do a quick video call is awesome. And I get to, just like I would in a normal phone system, right? All of my contacts, the history of calls that have come in or calls that I've missed. If I'm using that functionality, which we have some of that enabled, if I've got a voicemail or not, and things of that nature, right? All built right within Microsoft Teams. From a files perspective, this is where you're tying in SharePoint on the back end, right? So these are all the files that I've worked on, and I've either added and included them into a Teams conversation or a Teams channel, or it's just tied in because it's tied into my OneDrive, or it's because it's a file I've recently accessed, right? And so within that too, to show you, this actually ties in my OneDrive. So this is my actual work OneDrive that I've got right here with a couple key folders, a couple PowerPoints that we've worked on right here, right? So it ties all of that right into here. And if I actually went and just shared this out with, say, for example, with Jacob, and I shared it through OneDrive, we would be able to collaborate on that document just as if we were both in the office marking it up at the same time, all within Teams, all within that same conversation. And right within there, the great thing is if I wanted to make that a video call, I could do that really quickly and we could chat about it while we've got the document pulled up right there, which is really, really helpful. I mentioned integrations as being a massive benefit for us. And so you can see here I've got RingCentral enabled as an integration. And so there are a number of things that I can do within RingCentral, right? So I could start a conference call, I could start a video meeting, I could see what all the different prompts are that I would have available to me if I need to log in, log out, all of that kind of stuff, right? All of that can come right within there. And then last but not least, a couple quick things up here. So this search functionality I absolutely love, and this is actually what I'm using more and more. Because if you do /, for example, and let's say I want to have a quick conversation with Jacob. So I can do /chat, then I can pick Jacob, and then I can write in here, type in my message. If I then want to go and view that chat, I can either click enter, click on that little icon, and it takes me right to that. If I want to set my status as available, then I can quickly do that. And you're going to see over here, it's going to change from red to green, not to blue. So your status is being set to available. There we go. If I need to change it back, I can quickly do that, which I will, just to let people know I am actually busy. And if you just want to see what all of them are, you just basically type in the / and it shows you all of those quick prompts that are built right within there, which have been really, really helpful. The other quick thing that I really enjoy about all of this is, so because we're remote, it's hard sometimes for people to know, are they on lunch or are they not on lunch? And so just like within Skype, you could set basically an away message. But the thing where I like what Teams does is if I want to say that I'm on lunch and I want people to see that, I also don't want to have to go to remember that I want that to expire after an hour, right? So I can set that status and I can say I want this to expire in an hour so that if I get up from my desk now and I go, that will clear within an hour. So I don't have to go back and remember, okay, it's still showing lunch for everybody. I should probably go in and clear that. Just a quick little thing that I've really enjoyed about Microsoft Teams, right? So that's the desktop application itself. Now, in relation to the browser, I'm not going to dive into this heavily, only because it's very, very similar. So you can see here the navigation pane is almost identical. The functionality, most importantly, I get the same GIFs that I get in the browser version, which is just vital for Jacob and I to actually connect. So all of these things are very, very similar to the desktop version. There's the only nuance, honestly, that I've seen, and I know there's a few kind of on the back end, but the only one that I've really seen that was noticeable to me right away is I'm not able to share out my screen. So I can do a video call, I can do an audio call, but I can't share out my screen like I can on the desktop version. That is the only thing that I think most users would probably notice right away, which again, I don't think is, for a lot of users, really that big of a deal, right? Now, the last thing I'll show you, because I showed you something really quickly, around how you can go from Teams to Outlook, right? But let's say I actually am in an Outlook and I just want to shoot a quick email. So what I can actually do right from here, and what you'll see in this is actually me sending an email. And I sent this email from my Outlook that went directly to this channel and this conversation. And so what you have to do to basically get that is you can go within the channel and you can say get email address. It's going to pop up an email address for me. I'll bring up my Outlook over here. If I want to have that, and I think I already have it in here. So then this will actually send a message to that specific channel. So it might take a little bit because obviously I'm doing a presentation right now, doing this at my home internet. So it might take a little bit. Oh, it just popped up for me there. So you can see there is that type of integration built within Outlook, which is really, really great. So I know that that is a really quick overview and demo of Microsoft Teams, but hopefully that whets your appetite a little bit about all that you can do within it. Jumping back into the presentation here, because I do want to give maybe a minute or two just for questions. How can we help? How can CCB help you? The first is on training and consulting. There is a lot to Microsoft Teams. I've barely scratched the surface in what I just showed you there. And so if you're using it already, but you think, I don't know if I'm using it right, I could really use some more training, we can do 2-hour, half-day, full-day training sessions for you. If that's something that you think would be really beneficial to you or your team, that's something we can do. Overall consulting as well. If you want to implement it yourself, but you want to have that consulting of, so how do I set up those types of permissions? What PowerShell scripts do I need to run to make sure I don't have all of my users just going crazy and creating teams, because that's going to be a management nightmare. That's a big thing that we can do as well. In addition to that, we can help you implement it. If you are like, look, we need this, we need it now, I need help implementing it and migrating to it in addition to the training, we can jump in and do that as well. And then something that we've been doing from day one with 365 is providing 24/7 support. So if you need that, beyond just the initial setup and training, we can actually go in and help you also support and administer that on an ongoing basis. And so what should you be doing now? What I'll tell you first off is, if you're interested, and if you are not on Teams already, schedule a demo with one of our engineers, and we'd be happy to run through with you all the ins and outs that is Microsoft Teams. If you want to go further that and schedule a consultation, we can do that as well. But I definitely say, for that first step of really getting your feet wet, create a pilot within Teams. I would say block it down so not everybody has access and not everybody's starting to create teams, and test it with a small group to get a feel for what works for you and what doesn't. That's what we did, and overall the deployment and rollout has gone very, very, very well. So I'm going to pull up over here just a few questions. So the first question that I've got here during this Q&A time is actually specifically around, can you have guests and can you have guest access? And the answer to that is yes. So if you have somebody that's an external, they're not actually an employee of your organization, but they're an external, maybe client or partner that you're working with, you can provide them guest access. Part of that has to be allowed on the administrative side, and then they can either have their own business account or a consumer account as well. And as long as they have that, you can grant them that guest access, and they can collaborate and communicate with you on Microsoft Teams. Another question is there a way to adjust what it says specifically, i.e. on a meeting or call, or is this automatic based on what is on the calendar? There is a way to change that. For sake of time, I won't go into that, but yes, that can be altered, just as a quick response to that. Okay, last one here, a question I've got, and then we'll move on to the last few slides and close this out because we are just at 11:30. Why would I choose to use RingCentral when I've got M365? Can M365 provide cloud phone system with the same functions as RingCentral? The answer is 100% yes. Now, a big component, and I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, is if you've already got Microsoft Teams because you've already got 365, then you're not going to be paying for anything additional, keyword, unless you actually do go to implement the phone system component. If you're using PSTN and all of that functionality as a true phone system within Teams, that is an additional charge. right? So there are features and functionality within Ring Central and Teams. Being honest with you, we've been on Ring Central for almost 5 years now. And for us, it's worked great in a number of ways. We've considered potentially moving to Teams. And that's something that for us is on the roadmap of maybe this is something we need to consider and test out and do. But I don't want to say that because in any way to make you think we're not happy with Ring Central. We're very happy with Ring Central. To be honest, they are in many ways the exact same type of solution. They do different things, but very, very similar in what you're able to do within all of them. Okay, I see a number of other questions coming. I'm going to save those for now just for sake of time. But like I mentioned, if you can please continue to add those questions or even just add what you want shown, those are things that as we do these additional webinars, we're going to do little quick hits. We'll definitely try and demo those out or dive into those further. So as I'm going through the final slides here for the next minute or two on this presentation, definitely add those into the chat so that we can be sure to make sure that those relevant conversations are happening after this.
Logan,
so,
one thing I want to say really quick, they do have a lot of questions coming in for everybody about permissions. And so just a quick overview on that. You can lock down who can create teams, who can't create teams. You can lock down who has the ability to add apps into there and what apps those can be. And you can lock that down per policy and set up groups. You can also, within a team, control who can create and edit channels and that sort of thing as well. So you can get pretty granular on the permissions. There are quite a few questions on that, so that's probably one of the topics just for everybody else that we'll look to maybe do another one on, just specifically around locking this down. Because one thing we did is that if people create teams, there are some SharePoint sites that get created on the back end, there are some 365 groups. And so one of the things we said as we rolled this out is that we didn't want a ton of sprawl of just people creating teams, and it creates a bunch of administrative overhead on the back end. So that is definitely something we locked down on ours, and there is quite a bit of granularity of what you can do. So there's a lot of questions around that. Will probably be one that we'll look to do on future ones.
Great. Thanks, Jacob. Appreciate you jumping in on that one because I'm just seeing those now. So great. Wrapping this up with just these last few slides, like Jacob mentioned, we're going to be doing additional Teams sessions coming up here in the coming weeks. But if you also want to be a part of, like for us from a company from that perspective, a lot of what we believe is investing into leadership, even more so in a lot of ways than investing into the technology, right? Because at the end of the day, people are what matter. And so we are actually kicking off this coming Monday a leadership webinar series that's going to focus on a number of key items. And as you can see what they're scheduled for and what the topics are, there's some really great topics that are very relevant to everything that's going on right now. And at the very bottom, you can see where you have the ability or opportunity to register for those, which I would encourage you to do so. I know those are filling up pretty quickly. So I would definitely say if these are of interest to you, would encourage you to check those out. So with that, if you have any additional questions, I just wanted to give you very quickly my contact info. You can take a quick screenshot from there and reach out to me should you have any follow-up questions. I'm more than happy to answer or bring in Jacob from a very technical side, especially on the administrative aspect with what that looks like. With that, I'm so sorry that we went 4 minutes over, but I do hope this was valuable time for you and that you've learned a lot. Like I said, we look forward to connecting with you on all of this in the future with these additional little sessions that we're doing. But thank you for your time and have a great day.